I'll never forget the way she looked at my daughter. You know that expression people wear when they're trying not to laugh, but not in a kind way, in a mean, smug way, like they're above the moment? That was my sister, Brielle, holding my daughter's homemade card in her manicured hand, eyebrows raised like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. She tilted her head slightly, then said it, sharp, cold, and loud enough for Lila to hear. She's not even smart enough to spell my name right. And just like that, the whole room changed. My daughter, Lila, just stood there, 7 years old, wearing the little sparkly headband she picked out herself, fingers still sticky with glitter glue and birthday cupcake crumbs. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at her aunt, blinking slowly, like she was trying to figure out why someone she loved would say something like that. I froze. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew that anything I said would blow up into something bigger than the moment deserved. And I didn't want Lila caught in that. I wanted her to have one nice afternoon with her aunt. Just one. But then, without missing a beat, Lila held her chin up, looked Brielle right in the eyes, and said something that didn't just shift the moment, it shattered it. She said, "I spelled it like Dad spells it in his texts to you." Let me take you back to how we got there. My name is Olivia. I'm a single mom, 36, living just outside of Columbus, Ohio. I have one daughter, Lila, and I'd move the sun for her if I had to. She's this beautiful, whip-smart, artistic little soul, big brown eyes that notice everything. The kind of kid who makes birthday cards weeks in advance and hides them in places she thinks I won't find them, like the freezer. We were baking cookies that morning. Lila wanted to make Aunt Brielle's favorites, chocolate chip with sea salt. She insisted on folding the flour in herself, even though half of it ended up on the dog. The whole time, she kept talking about the card. She had been working on it for 3 days, picking out stickers, drawing a big blue sun in the corner, writing, "Happy Birthday, Auntie Brielle," in purple marker. She asked me how to spell it the first time. I told her. She frowned, then ran off. Said she wanted to do it her way. That's the kind of kid Lila is. She listens. She watches. But when she decides something, she wants to own it. Now, Brielle, my sister, she's complicated. We haven't always been close. She's the type who hosts wine tasting parties but doesn't like hugging people. She's always been a little hard to read. Fancy job in PR, never had kids, never really got kids either. But Lila adored her, called her the shiny lady. She thought Brielle was elegant, smart, special. So when Lila asked if we could go to her birthday gathering and give her the card in person, I said yes, even though my gut told me we'd probably walk into one of those polite, cold environments where kids are more tolerated than welcomed. We showed up, card in hand, cookies in the other. Lila was bouncing, practically glowing. She walked up, said, "Happy birthday," and handed Brielle the card like it was the greatest treasure she'd ever made. And Brielle barely looked at it. She glanced once, scoffed, and muttered the words I will never forget. She's not even smart enough to spell my name right. Right in front of her, and maybe for a second Brielle thought she was being funny, that it was harmless, that kids forget, that I wouldn't say anything. But she forgot one thing. Lila is my daughter. And what Lila said next didn't just catch Brielle off guard. It exposed something much deeper than a misspelled name. I spelled it like Dad spells it in his texts to you. I felt the air leave the room. Brielle went completely still, the kind of stillness where your face is working hard not to show emotion, but your hands are already betraying you. Her fingers folded the card in half, then unfolded it, twice, eyes darting, trying to figure out if what Lila said meant what it sounded like it meant. And I stood there, holding my breath, not because I didn't want to speak, but because I realized Lila already had. It started like any ordinary Sunday. Cold outside, but cozy in our little house. The kind of cozy you only get when you've been up since dawn, baking with your kid, still in pajamas, music playing in the background, and the smell of vanilla in the air. Leela and I had been planning this day all week. We woke up early because she wanted everything to be perfect for Aunt Brielle's birthday. Not just the cookies, which had to be chocolate chip with those flakes of salt on top like the bakery does, but the card, especially the card. To most people, it's just a folded piece of construction paper. But for Lila, it was so much more. It was her way of saying, I love you, I want to matter to you. I watched her sit at the kitchen table, tongue poking out the side of her mouth while she carefully glued each sticker, tracing over her letters twice just to make them bold. She asked me how to spell happy birthday, and I helped. Then she asked how to spell Brielle, and I paused. I knew how to spell my sister's name, obviously, but I hesitated, not because of the spelling, but because of what that name meant to me in that moment. Brielle and I weren't close growing up. She's 7 years older than me, always more polished, more distant. The kind of big sister who didn't really play with you but reminded you not to touch her makeup. As adults, we drifted further apart, mostly because we're just wired differently. She likes everything structured, image-conscious. I've always leaned into the mess, the real, the raw. Parenting forces you to. When Nate, my ex, walked out 2 years ago, Brielle didn't exactly show up. No casseroles, no late-night phone calls, just a cold, sorry to hear that, you'll figure it out, you're strong. That was her idea of comfort. And while I appreciated the vote of confidence, I would have traded it in a heartbeat for someone just sitting next to me while I cried. To Lila, Brielle was a star. She wore heels that clicked on hardwood floors and smelled like expensive perfume. She drove a shiny white car that Lila called the spaceship. Brielle was magic to her. And so, when Lila asked if we could bring the card and cookies to her in person, I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to see my sister, but because I knew how easily she could disappoint a kid who still believed the best in people. Still, I said yes. Because that's what you do as a mom. You take calculated risks, hoping your child will walk away a little stronger, not more bruised. So, we packed the cookies in a tin. Lila insisted on using the one with snowflakes, even though it wasn't Christmas yet, and she tucked the card in her jacket right next to her heart. She didn't say much on the drive over, just stared out the window, humming to herself. I could see her little foot bouncing in anticipation. My stomach was doing the same, but for very different reasons. We pulled up to Brielle's townhouse. Everything was crisp, white, and styled. Even the front wreath looked like it had been arranged by a professional. Lila reached for the cookies, her other hand still clutching the card. Before we rang the bell, I knelt down beside her. Hey, I said softly, you excited? She nodded quickly. I worked really hard on it. I think she's gonna love it. I smiled, but part of me wanted to hold her back, to protect her from whatever expression might flash across Brielle's face. When she opened that card and realized the I in her name had a heart over it, or that Brielle had a missing E at the end. But I didn't. I let Lila ring the bell. Brielle opened the door with her usual flawless smile, wine glass in one hand, neutral lipstick, barely smudged. Well, look who it is, she said. Lila stepped forward, holding out the card like it was sacred. That moment, that tiny hand offering something made of glitter and pure love, is the moment I keep replaying in my mind. Because what happened after wasn't about a card. It was about the weight of love and the damage of being dismissed. And it all started with that simple Sunday morning, a batch of cookies, and a little girl who believed showing up with her whole heart was enough. The moment we stepped inside Brielle's townhouse, I knew we were in her world now. The walls were bone white, the furniture sleek and cold, and the smell of eucalyptus hung in the air like a warning sign. No mess, no noise, no emotion. Lila's glitter-smudged fingers looked out of place here. So did we. Brielle barely glanced at the tin of cookies before setting them on her kitchen island, like she was afraid they might stain the marble. She was wearing this cream-colored sweater that looked like it had never seen a washing machine. Lipstick perfect. Nails flawless. No hugs, just a thin smile and a, you didn't have to do all this. Lila didn't notice the coolness. Or maybe she did, but was too determined to make this a good birthday. She held the card close to her chest, waiting for the right moment to give it. I could see how proud she was, how hard she was trying to impress someone who hadn't earned her admiration. We stood around awkwardly for a few minutes while Brielle refilled her wine. No one else was there. She never really liked big gatherings. Too messy, she'd say. Then Lila stepped forward, eyes bright, and handed her the card. "Happy birthday, Aunt Brielle," she said, beaming. I could feel myself smiling, too. It was one of those moments where you just hope that the person receiving the gift understands what's really being offered, not just paper and glue, but love, effort, a child's entire heart in her two little hands. Brielle took the card delicately, like it might fall apart if she touched it too long. She opened it, paused, then scoffed, literally scoffed, and without looking at Lila, she said, "She's not even smart enough to spell my name right." Just like that. I don't know if I've ever felt a silence so loud. My ears were ringing. I looked at Lila, standing frozen in her little glitter-splashed sneakers. Her face didn't crumple. She didn't cry. She just stared at her aunt like she couldn't quite understand the words. I saw her lips part, like she was going to say something, but she didn't. Not yet. I felt heat rise in my chest. My hand clenched around the edge of the kitchen counter. Every cell in my body was screaming to speak, to stand between my child and that cold remark. But I didn't, and I hate that part. The pause. Because in that second, I was weighing everything. Would saying something make it worse for Lila? Would it turn this into a bigger fight? Would Brielle dismiss it again, or laugh it off and make me look like the emotional one? Again? I thought I had prepared for this visit. I thought I could manage Brielle's edges. But nothing prepares you for the moment someone wounds your child while smiling. Then, just as I opened my mouth, Lila's voice broke the silence. Calm, steady. She looked Brielle in the eye and said, "Spelled it like Dad spells it in his texts to you." The air went still. My heart stopped. I didn't even register what she meant. Not right away, but Brielle did. She blinked, visibly. Her fingers curled slightly around the card, now suddenly heavy in her hand. I watched her swallow. Once, twice. Like she couldn't quite get the taste of those words out of her mouth. I looked at Lila, who was still standing there. Not angry, not smug. Just honest. Her voice hadn't carried malice. It had carried truth. That soft, cutting truth only a child can deliver, because they have no idea what it's worth or what it costs. Then I felt it. This shift. Like the floor beneath us had quietly tilted, and we were no longer standing in a polite birthday visit. We were standing in something real. And Brielle? She wasn't in control anymore. Because what Lila had unknowingly revealed was bigger than a misspelled name. It was a crack in the foundation, a hint that there was something between Brielle and Nate, something private, something Lila had seen without us realizing she was watching, and suddenly spelling didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that my daughter had pulled back the curtain, and we were all left staring at what was behind it. She had no idea what she'd just said. The silence after Lila spoke was heavier than any argument I'd ever had with my sister. I looked at Brielle. She was blinking in slow motion, like someone trying to process a sentence in a foreign language, one they understood but didn't want to admit they did. I spelled it like Dad spells it in his texts to you. 7 words. That's all it took. 7 words from a 7-year-old to rip open something I didn't even know existed. At first, I didn't get it. I was too focused on Lila, on whether she understood what she'd just said. She looked up at her aunt with nothing but innocence. No malice, no smugness. She was proud. She thought she'd fix the card. But I saw Brielle's face change, not all at once. She was too polished for that. But there was a flicker, a tiny twitch in her cheek, her lips pressed together, her grip tightened around the card, crinkling the corner slightly. That's when the puzzle pieces started falling into place. Lila had never once seen Brielle write her own name. She must have spelled it based on something she'd seen. And the only connection she had was her dad, Nate, my ex-husband. I turned to look at my daughter, my brave, observant little girl who always watched more than I realized. I asked gently, "Sweetheart, when did you see Daddy text Aunt Brielle?" She shrugged. "Sometimes when I'm playing on his phone. He lets me use it for games. I saw a text that said, 'Hey Brielle,' and I remembered how he spelled it." I could barely breathe. That knot in my stomach, that slow suspicion I'd been pushing down for years, tightened into something solid. I looked back at Brielle, and I knew there had been something between them, or there still was. She didn't deny it. She didn't defend herself. She just set the card down on the counter very deliberately and picked up her wine glass with her other hand. Her fingers shook slightly, barely noticeable. Unless you knew her. I knew her. And in that moment, I knew she was cornered. Not by me, not even by Lila, but by the truth. The truth from a child who had no idea she was holding dynamite. I felt rage bubble inside me, not just at Brielle, but at Nate too, at the thought that while I was trying to keep our family from falling apart, he had been texting my sister, and that she had been responding. And the worst part? They both thought Lila would never notice, that she'd never piece anything together, that they could act behind closed doors, and a child's memory was too soft, too fragile to hold on to details. But they underestimated her. They underestimated me. I looked at Brielle. "You're going to tell me right now what that meant," I said quietly but firmly. My voice didn't shake, but I was shaking all over. "Because if I find out from someone else, I will never speak to you again. I swear to God, Brielle." She didn't look at me. She stared at her wine. I waited. She finally whispered, "It wasn't what you think. Coward." "I don't care what you think it was," I said. "It shouldn't have happened at all." Lila looked between us, sensing the tension, but not the cause. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked, voice suddenly small. My heart snapped back into place. I knelt down beside her, cupping her face gently. "No, baby. You did everything right." Because she had. She told the truth without even knowing it. She'd said the thing no adult in that room had the courage to say, and in that moment, I made a decision. I was done protecting the feelings of people who couldn't be bothered to protect my daughter's heart. I stood up. "We're leaving." Brielle opened her mouth like she wanted to stop me, but she didn't, because what could she possibly say? I took Layla's hand, warm and sticky from cookie crumbs, and walked us out of that too-white house, down the stone steps past the spotless car, back into the cold air that somehow felt freer than anything inside that place. That's when it shifted. Not just the day, but me. For years, I'd tried to keep the peace, tried to pretend Brielle was just difficult and Nate was just complicated. But that day, that tiny moment, it was the last time I'd apologize for drawing lines around the people I loved, especially the one who still spelled names with stickers and glue. The card wasn't the only thing that got exposed. We didn't speak in the car at first. Lila sat in the back, still clutching the corner of her jacket where the card had been tucked earlier. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just full of all the things that had been said and the ones that hadn't. I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting near my phone, which buzzed twice as we pulled out of Brielle's neighborhood. It was from Nate, as if summoned by the storm. The first message said, "Hey, I heard you went by Brielle's today. Everything okay?" The second, "She just texted me. Said Lila said something weird." My throat tightened. Weird? It wasn't weird. It was true, and that's what made it so heavy. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not yet. Because something had snapped in me back there. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a final, soul-deep kind of way. Like a string had been pulled too tight for too long and finally gave way. Brielle could have lied. She could have made something up, brushed it off, blamed Lila, claimed a misunderstanding, but she didn't. She said, "It's not what you think," which was just a confession wrapped in cowardice. It was what I thought, and worse. The timeline started to come together now. The way Brielle always took Nate's side when we were arguing, how she seemed to understand him in ways I never could, how he once joked that Brielle was the only sane person in your family when we fought. At the time, I thought it was just a dig at me. Now I knew it was something more. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Lila was gazing out the window, face calm, but I could see her thumb brushing the edge of her coat repeatedly. It was something she did when she was trying to self-soothe. "Hey, baby," I said gently. She looked up. "Yeah?" "Do you remember what Dad and Aunt Brielle talk about when they text?" She thought for a second. "Not really, just stuff. One time he sent her a bunch of emojis and said she was a lifesaver. Another time he said he missed how she made fun of people with him. I felt it, that sharp sting behind the eyes, like betrayal dressed in lowercase letters. I nodded slowly, not wanting her to see the pain in my face. She didn't understand the weight of what she was saying. She just remembered what stood out. That's what kids do. They catalog what we don't think they see, and somewhere between their selfish texts and secret exchanges, they forgot that children are always listening, always learning. We pulled into our driveway, and as I turned off the engine, I took a breath and made a choice. No more silence. No more making excuses for adults who thought love was transactional. That night, after Lila went to bed, I texted Nate. "You and my sister? I know. Lila saw enough to figure it out, and now I have too." No curse words, no accusations, just clarity. Then I sent one more text to Betrayal. "I will never keep Lila from knowing who you are. She figured it out herself today, but I'm done pretending you're someone she should admire." I didn't expect a response. I didn't need one. This wasn't about revenge, it was about freedom. For years, I carried this belief that keeping family close, no matter what, was the right thing. That tolerating coldness, biting comments, and emotional distance was better than being too sensitive. But standing there in her perfect kitchen, watching her scoff at a child's love letter, I finally saw it clearly. Family isn't blood. It's protection. It's presence. It's who you fight for, not who you keep around out of obligation. Lila had unknowingly done what I couldn't do for years. She pulled back the curtain with one honest sentence. She didn't do it to hurt anyone. She did it the only way a child can, with truth, with no agenda, with love. And that moment, that simple line, I spelled it like Dad spells it in his texts to you. It exposed years of hidden betrayals, but it also reminded me why I fight, not for some broken idea of family, but for my daughter, for her clarity, her softness, her unshakable honesty. Because if a little girl can stand in the face of cruelty and still offer love, then a mother can damn well stand beside her and never let her question her worth again. She told the truth, and it freed me. The next morning, I watched Lila eat her cereal, humming quietly to herself, as if the day before had been nothing more than a skipped stone across a still lake. Kids are resilient, but what people don't always realize is resilience doesn't mean they weren't hurt. It just means they bounce back faster and they hide it in places we don't always know how to look. I poured my coffee, and for a moment, I just stood there watching her. The way her toes curled around the bottom rung of the kitchen stool, how she carefully moved her spoon around the edge of the bowl so the milk didn't splash. She was so small, and yet yesterday she'd said something that cracked open the truth like glass. She didn't even know she had, and that's what kept echoing in my mind. Lila had no idea the weight her words carried. She wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She was trying to be right, to show her aunt that she'd paid attention, that she'd done her best. That's what shattered me most. The love in her intent, the sting in Brielle's reaction, the betrayal sitting underneath it all like something rotting beneath clean floorboards. I sat down across from her and reached for her hand. "Hey, can I ask you something?" She nodded with a mouthful of cereal. "Yesterday, when you told Aunt Brielle about the spelling, did something feel weird to you, or were you just trying to help?" She blinked a few times, then shrugged. "I just remembered it. From Dad's phone. I thought she'd like it, 'cause he's grown up and spells it like that. I don't know, she'd think I was smart." I smiled and swallowed the lump in my throat. "You are smart, baby. So smart and thoughtful and brave. I'm proud of what you said, even if it surprised people." She grinned and nodded, then reached for her juice like the conversation was over. And in a way it was, because Lila had moved on. She had no idea the storm she'd stirred, but I had. That night changed something in me. I didn't sleep much. I lay awake turning it over and over, years of second-guessing myself, brushing off gut feelings, trying to hold a family together that wasn't interested in holding me. I thought about the way Brielle used to make subtle digs at my parenting, always wrapped in friendly advice, the way she'd insist she was just being honest, while slicing open parts of me I'd worked hard to protect. I thought about Nate's long silences, his excuses, his sudden understanding of my sister's quirks. They weren't just whispers behind my back. They were emotional termites, slowly eating away at my confidence, my trust, my ability to stand up and say, enough. But Lila, she handed them truth in a glitter-covered card, and the truth broke everything open. In the days that followed, I didn't reach out to Brielle again. I didn't respond to Nate's second and third texts, or the one where he tried to shift blame. We were just talking, nothing happened, don't be dramatic. He didn't get it. He never would. Because it wasn't about cheating. Not just that. It was about loyalty, trust, emotional integrity. I wasn't angry that they had conversations behind my back. I was angry that they thought it didn't matter, that they thought I wouldn't notice, that they thought Lila wouldn't. A week later, I sat down with my daughter and we made another card. This time, it wasn't for anyone else. It was a card for her, from me. On the front, I wrote her name in big letters with stars around it. Inside, I wrote, "To my Lila, you spelled the truth. You spoke with love. You are everything right in this world, and you are never, ever too small to be heard." She read it quietly, then looked up and smiled, holding it against her chest like it was a treasure. That card's still on her nightstand. She doesn't know what she taught me that day. She just thinks she made a mistake and fixed it. But I know better. She reminded me that children see what we try to hide, that silence isn't protection, it's permission, and that speaking the truth, even when it's wrapped in innocence, can be the bravest thing of all. I used to wonder if raising her without a full family would leave a hole in her life. Now I know. I'm not raising her with less. I'm raising her with truth, and that will always be enough. Thanks for listening to our story. If you've ever had someone underestimate your child, or if you've had to find strength in the middle of betrayal, I hope this gave you something to hold on to. Kids notice everything, and sometimes they're the ones who teach us how to be brave. If this story resonated with you, please take a second to like the video. It really helps more people find it. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that honesty, even when it's small and quiet, can change everything. And if you'd like to hear more true, personal stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Tell me in the comments, has a child ever surprised you with something they noticed or said? I read everyone, and I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, and take care of yourself and take care of your people.